So Atomic Heart is
Crispy critters.
okay. Atomic Heart is.
Am I gonna turn into a crispy critter if I stay in here too long?
You done? You good? All right. Atomic Heart.
Crispy critters!
Oh my god. So this is certainly a game. Is it a good one? Sometimes, but most of the time it's a little what's the word? Cringe? But I'm getting ahead of myself. This review won't contain any spoilers, so you're free to watch. Enjoy the review and subscribe. So this game is a first-person shooter, and well, it's not necessarily an amazing one in any one aspect. More so, it's painfully average in most of them. That's not to say it's bad, but it's not anything super unique in the first-person shooter genre. It very clearly draws inspiration from BioShock, Wolfenstein, and Doom in the gameplay and story areas. More on the story aspect later. You have a few options when it comes to combat: shooting, melee, and using your glove's power system. Shooting was fine, and that's kind of it. Like, it works and it does its job, but it's very unsatisfying in terms of feel. I'm not looking for the next Call of Duty, of course, but with other games like these such as Doom or Wolfenstein, they're very satisfying to play. For this genre of game, I want that unique, satisfying, and rewarding gunplay, considering that's what I'll be doing for the majority of my time. Unfortunately, Atomic Heart falls flat with that aspect. Everything feels very light and not impactful at all. Again, it's not bad, but it's very lackluster and frankly brings down the combat experience in my opinion. Let's talk about gunplay first. So with the guns, you can find them by exploring the world, but most of the ones that I found were found by recipes that you get throughout the world and you can craft them. More about the crafting system in a bit. The guns offered are actually pretty varied and cover a wide range of styles. You can collect more blueprints through the world to upgrade your guns with the resources that you gather. You get resources by searching through chests and looting dead enemies. The game is pretty generous with the resources and makes a great design choice with the looting system. They designed it so that when you're looting, you just kind of hold the loot button and everything in the vicinity that you're looking at kind of vacuums up into your backpack. It was neat and made looting a lot easier, which I appreciated. Melee combat was alright as well. I mean, again, nothing crazy, but it worked. Same system as before. You can craft melee weapons through blueprints and upgrade them with other blueprints. One thing that combat does that I thought was neat is that you can augment your shots or melee damage with a cartridge system after you get the appropriate upgrade. Slot in the cartridge you want, and now you're doing electricity, fire, or frost damage. Cool in concept, and I did like the implementation here. Other than melee and gunplay, you're using your glove's power system to get the edge in fights. You get 2 interchangeable slots that allow you to equip 2 different skills, as well as an electricity blast that's always equipped. You can also upgrade these powers via resources found throughout the world, and the upgrades are pretty substantial, so definitely go for that investment. On that note, don't be afraid of using your resources. Truth be told, the game does an awesome job with the crafting system here, upgrades and powers included. They actually give you a full refund for anything you want to return. For example, I ran with the frost power for the first bit of the game, and it was fun, but the further I got into the game, the less effective it was. So I refunded it and actually got the active shield ability. And they gave me all the resources that I spent on the frost power so I could bring the shield ability back up to snuff where I needed it to be for where I was in the game. Guns and melee weapon refunds function the same way, and I really applaud Mundfish for adding that functionality in. It really incentivized me to try out all of the powers and weapons. Combat happens all over the place in this game. Whether you're exploring, solving puzzles, or looking for resources, you can rest assured you will probably be fighting something before doing any of that. Now, in most games, that's not a bad thing. Combat and world engagement is necessary in these games to keep it interesting. Unfortunately, Atomic Heart has the problem of trying to force you to engage with enemies that are just not fun to fight. No matter where you go, there will be enemies, and sometimes there are cameras. If the cameras see you fight enemies, they will send more enemies your way until you take the camera out, kill off all the enemies, or escape the area entirely. And the issue is that these enemies are just not very interesting to fight. The enemy variety is very lacking the deeper you get into the game, and they all have this annoying knockdown status effect. If you get hit by it, a character's thrown back, sometimes into a wall, sometimes into other enemies. Whatever the case is, you're forced to wait a second before standing up. And if you're really unlucky, other enemies will have the same attack ready so that when you stand back up, boom, you're on the ground again, trapping you in an annoying loop. And sometimes they'll just knock you down without warning, so who knows what triggers it at this point. Coupled with the unsatisfying gun and melee combat, fighting enemies became more of an annoyance than anything else. Enemy AI was not that smart, and all the normal enemies were easily dispatched. There's nothing really crazy challenging about any of them, to be honest, and no one really felt like a true threat. In concept, the alert system thing is kind of cool, where if a camera sees you fighting people, it's going to send more people to your location. But, I mean, realistically, I just destroy the camera and the alert goes away. It's not really any threat. They also have a stealth system in here, kind of. Avoid the cameras, and you can also do some stealth takedowns. But the opportunities for the stealth takedowns were so few and far between, and they took forever to do that it just wasn't worth it. By the time I finished it, I'd get spotted and nullify the entire effect. So I didn't even bother with the system. By the end of the game, I found myself wanting to skip encounters pretty frequently, just because it didn't really capture my interest. Again, it's not bad per se, it's just bland and kind of boring. The bosses are also just okay, to be honest, nothing super crazy, and sometimes they did do cool stuff, but they were especially bad about the knockdown status effect. Get hit by one of the knockdowns and you're kind of in a loop for a bit of time. Bosses felt really bullet spongy, and your main objective during these fights is to just dodge while you pump your ammo into them. Not bad, just not interesting. Besides combat, you have a semi-open world to explore. Exploring grants you resources, and sometimes you stumble upon a dungeon that has some platforming where once you complete it, you get resources or a blueprint. And that part is cool. You get to explore this big compound and scrounge around for gear, and it's kind of nice to divert from the main path a little to explore. Your glove tells you about the world, and you can read about it as you search around, reading computer terminals as well as talking to dead NPCs, and that part was cool. The history and the world itself felt built out in the background. The world is neat, and I think that's where Atomic Heart shines. Visually, the game looks great. There is no dancing around that fact. The game looks and actually runs very well. Atomic Heart is set in an alternate future world where the Soviet Union is still around and on the cusp of a technological breakthrough. And I think the world they built out is very cool in concept. It has heavy Bioshock Infinite vibes, and it made for a fun time going around and experiencing various parts of the world, for a little bit. Unfortunately, I do not think they utilized the setting very well after spending a bit of time with the game. For the first hour, it's awesome. Exploring and seeing what the game has to offer is fun, and the alternate history timeline seems to be well built out. And then the story and writing start to show, and holy shit, I cannot stand this game at times. What is it about Doom and Wolfenstein's main characters that make them so likable? For Wolfenstein, you're a badass fighting off the Nazi regime, and the writing complements that. For Doom Guy's quiet yet brutal composure is amplified by the writing, or lack thereof, for the character. You like these characters, they're fun, they're interesting. Now, in Atomic Heart, you play as P3, an amnesiac soldier with an AI-powered glove that guides you through the game. Sounds cool in concept and has a lot of potential, right? Well, buckle up because the writing in this game is rough.
How dense do you think I am? I know where I need to go to complete my mission.
I was only trying to make things easier for you.
You can make things easier by getting off my grill.
Talk about style. Science is power, I tell you. The boss has a way of looking down on insurmountable obstacles. I really respect that. Crispy critters, man. Fuck.
Watch your language, Major. We're in a public place.
Yeah, whatever.
It is so rough that about a quarter of the way through the game, I actively despise the main character. The guy you play as. He is so insufferable that I could not enjoy the game at times because he would just not stop talking, complaining, or making random like Marvel-esque quips that he thinks are funny, but they're cringe. They're just cringe. That's all it is. He's also just very unlikable. Like, he's just an asshole for no good reason. Like, it doesn't further his character or his character development at all until the end of the game, and by that point, it was done. I just did not care for him anymore. For example, at various parts in the game, your character is just a huge dick to your AI glove, also known as Charles. He's the only friend you have for the entire game, and for no reason at all, he's just rude. Quite literally, I would just be like, oh, like, thanks, Charles, it's really good information that you're giving me. And then P3 would just be like, go to hell. It's like, whoa, relax, buddy. What the hell is your problem? Overall, I think the writers just made some really strange choices for the main character of their game. On one hand, I think they were going for a badass American soldier man archetype, and that's fine. If you want to go for that, go for it. But why are you doing that in a game that's based in the USSR of all places? Why not focus on bringing a badass Russian soldier to the narrative? Like, it's a little weird because every character you interact with is Russian, have Russian names, have Russian interactions, all that kind of stuff. And yet your character is the most American of them all. And he's pro-USSR, so it's a little weird to hear him talk about like, oh, the USSR is great, but be like, yeah, dude, I'm an American, bro. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. What made it worse is that for some reason, your character makes a lot of quips. It felt like a Marvel movie, and he just wouldn't start making remarks about everything. I really contemplated turning off the voice volume for this one, to be honest. And, okay, this might be the worst part. He is frustrated at everything in the game.
What am I supposed to do now? Search every single body here?
I suggest talking to the polymerized victims.
Shit. Do I have to?
Have to do a puzzle? He's going to complain. Have to talk to an NPC? He's gonna hate it. Have to talk to your AI glove? You bet your ass is gonna be mean and complain the entire time. He's just crying and bitching about anything that happens to him like a child who can't buy candy at the store. It got very old, very fast. Now, all these wouldn't be a problem if you didn't interact with a lot of people. Like, if you talk to someone once every like 2 to 3 hours and complain, fine. It isn't ideal, but it can be ignored if it's infrequent enough. But of course, that isn't the case, and the game just expedition jumps the narrative at you for like minutes on end very frequently. Huge portions of the plot are just dumped on you by either your glove or other NPCs, and your character is forced to listen to it, and by extension, you as the player. And of course, because your character is an ass, he responds in an ass-like way. Getting the plot explained? Shut up, this is dumb, I don't want to hear it. It's like, no dude, I want to hear it. Can you just stop talking, please? If the plot is complicated, then sure, I get it. Sometimes exposition dumps are necessary. But the plot is not nearly as clever as it thinks it is. More on that in a bit. The writing of Atomic Heart has a lot of weird choices, to be honest. One of the biggest issues I had with the game is that this game tries to find this weird balance of humor and seriousness and really struggles with it. Like, for some reason, there's a horny fridge in the game. No, seriously, look.
Of course there is, handsome. Anywhere I can tie up disgusting, horny creeps will do for me.
Ugh, you're seriously fucked in the head, lady.
Oh, honey, it's the ones with tendrils sprouting out of their heads that are seriously fucked. Not me.
So you didn't like it here because there weren't enough people?
There are never enough. I'm so bored. You are a breath of fresh air, handsome. Enter me hard and often.
Oh, fuck.
And like, the thing is, it serves no purpose for the fridge to be that horny except for the sake of the joke, and it's not even funny. It's just really uncomfortable, and they keep doing it. The same jokes get played at certain sections, and it's just so strange because the rest of the game is like, dude, people are dying and the robots are taking over. What are we gonna do? This could be the end of humanity as we know it. And then immediately after, it's like, boom, horny fridge. It's just like, why? Why is this a thing? There were also sections where it's like a fetch quest where I would grab an item, go back, see if it's the right item. If it's not, I'd have to go out, search again, whatever. And it was funny the first time. For the sake of the joke, made sense. But then they had the audacity to do it again. And at that point, I was just like,
The Darwin test with flight.
A cosmonaut.
I need to announce.
Unfortunately, this is beyond my ability.
why they would make me go through this entire process again, I don't really get it. Like, I understand it's for the joke, but it's the same exact joke and I didn't really enjoy it. I know some people did, so it's not that big of a deal, but yeah, whatever. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying there can't be any jokes in the game. Rather, in a game like this, clever jokes and good writing can really bring out much better experiences. That is not the case here. I think only a few jokes landed for me the whole 19 hours I spent with this game. A lot of them were placed in awkward spots and just did not pan out very well. The game also throws a lot of puzzles at you, and they're not executed the best way. They're not bad, but again, they're just meh. The lockpicking puzzles are fine, and they are varied enough so that you always have to be on your toes with them. I believe there are about 5 to 6 iterations of the lockpicking minigame in here, and they're all pretty quick to solve, so no harm, no foul. The variations of puzzles are not that bad, and they do work pretty well in my opinion. There's a lot of them, and they're interesting enough to where it's like, okay, this is pretty chill. Is what I would say if the main character was not so annoying about the puzzles. Every single time I encountered one, he would complain. More puzzles? Why? It's like, bro, just let me play, man. Like, you guys made the game. Why are you making him complain about it? And again, they're not super hard puzzles, but for some reason, your character is super upset about having to do them in the first place. It doesn't really make any sense, and it was really annoying. If the writing of the game is telling me to be upset about the amount of puzzles that are in here, you can only imagine how I was actually feeling after dealing with this annoying ass character complaining about it the whole time. Okay, well, besides that, Atomic Heart also really struggles with pacing, both in terms of plot as well as physical design. There were times when I was in active conversation only to be cut off and shoved into the next bit of dialogue. No warning or anything. As for the plot, the game seems to move at a weird pace and it kind of escalates very fast in the final sections of the game. The game also ends in a weird spot too. There are 2 endings and I went and got both just to make sure I got the whole experience. Unfortunately, both endings were unsatisfying and kind of just happened. The game plot dumps and reveals stuff to you that you already had an idea about in the final hour, and they expect to have your mind blown. But at that point, I just didn't care for the main character so much, I really did not care how the story affected him. It just didn't matter to me. Overall, the writing and plot of the game just don't do it for me, to be honest. The game also does this weird thing of having all the characters, especially the main one, P3, speak as though the voice actor was given the lines and was told to record it without knowing the context of the scene. No urgency, no emotion, quite literally just sitting there being like, oh no, I'm gonna die. And that's kind of it. This happens throughout the entire game. A lot of the times, the game's dialogue does not match up with the subtitles, which really makes you think that the dialogue was recorded in after the game was finished, or at least something of that nature, because oftentimes a scene would happen and animations would occur, but they wouldn't match the dialogue, or the dialogue wouldn't match the action. A random joke here or there, a random freak out, etc. This happened quite a bit and stood out. All in all, story and writing of this game, it's just not it, and I really think that they could have used a bit more polish in that regard. So, like I said before, this is certainly a game. Atomic Heart really struggles to bring everything together into a cohesive package. Combat is a bit lacking, story and writing is not great, but the world and visuals are still pretty cool. I do want to say that Mundfish did do a good job of bringing us like a complete game for their first big project. Even though I personally did not think it was that great, I would say that the game as a whole did its job in telling a story as well as having a fun game to play at times. Overall, this game is a bit complicated for me. The overarching theme of this review has been that it's not a bad game overall. It's just right down the middle, leaning a little towards the right, on the side of good. If Mundfish decides to make a sequel, I hope they really work on the story and gameplay elements a bit more to really flesh it out. I would probably be interested if they did. Like I said, the world and the actual environment, it's neat, it's just they don't do much with it. If you're looking for a 15 to 25 hour semi-open world adventure with simple combat and an interesting setting, and don't mind poor writing, this might be for you. For me, however, it kind of missed the mark. I am giving Atomic Heart a 6 out of 10, an experience that I wish had a bit more heart in it at an atomic level. I would say to play this game on Game Pass or wait for a big sale, around 50 to 60% off to be honest. I do not think I would pay $60 for this title. It is a bit short and does not offer enough for me to justify the full price. What do you think of the review? I really wanted to like the game a lot more, but unfortunately, I don't think it played well to its strengths. It's a shame too because when I saw the trailer when they announced it, I was really intrigued. Ah well, hopefully their next project hits better. I will definitely be keeping my eye out. If you like the review, consider subscribing.